Hey everybody, this is 6th grade math lesson 4-4, and after this I will do a video for 4-5. So in the video, you're not really going to be able to see me because I've had to adapt. This isn't the room that I usually use, so I've got the camera pulled close to the board so that you can see it. Sometimes you're just going to be able to see parts of me, like my arm writing on the board, that kind of thing. So I know it's a little weird, but it's the best that I've got to work with today. So the important thing is that you can see the board. Occasionally I might be in your way, but I'll move as quickly as I can. All right, so let's get started. Again, this is lesson 4-4. I hope I said that right the first time. And you should be on page 163 in your book, and we've already covered all of this information, so this is going to be a quick review. So let's look at these numbers that I've written across the top of the board. We have 0.23 or 23 hundredths, that's a decimal number. We have 1.7 or 1 and 7 tenths, that is also a decimal number. We have 3/4, what do we call that? That's a fraction. And we have 5 2/3, which is a mix, do you remember this? A mix of a whole number and a fraction. So that's why we call it a mixed number. I'm going to go in front of the camera and grab my eraser and get rid of that. Okay, so let's start talking about things that we learned in this lesson. We're going to learn how to switch back and forth between decimals and fractions or mixed numbers, which is super important in our ability to do math and to move forward in math. So moving from decimals to fractions is easier because really when we say what a decimal represents, what a decimal number represents, we really say it in fraction form. So if I asked you to read this number, this decimal number, you would read it as 23 hundredths. Well, that makes it really easy to change it to a fraction because we simply write what we said, 23 hundredths. So that's easy. It'll get a little more complicated as we go, and I want to remind you that with a video, you can always pause to really study something that I did, or you can rewind the video and re-watch part of it to help you understand. So I'm going to give you examples, and then you watch them as many times as you need to feel good about it. So if I wanted to change 1.7 to a fraction, or 1 and 7 tenths, again, I'm going to write it just as I read it. So it's going to be the whole number, 1, and exactly what I said, 7 tenths. So these two are equal. Now let's look at 3/4. Now we want to practice changing a fraction to a decimal. And these two, we went from decimal to fraction, and this we're going from fraction to decimal. I also want to tell you that I realized that some of this may be hard to see. The lighting is not great in here, and I wish I had a black pen. That would probably help in this room as well. But hopefully when it's blown up on your computer screen or iPad screen, it'll be easier. All right, so remember that when we're looking at fractions, this is so important, so remember what I'm saying and go back and review it if you need to. A fraction is really always a potential division problem because a fraction bar right here means divide. So this problem says 3/4, but it also says 3 divided by 4, which I think is really cool. So now we just need to set that up mathematically and solve. 3 divided by 4. Remember that we must do it in the order that we said it. The number in the house or in the box goes first. 3 divided by 4, 3 divided by 4. All right, well we can tell 4 will not go into 3, so let's go ahead and put that decimal number that we know that we're going to need. And we may find that we need more than 1, but we'll see. 4 will not go into 3. Let's move our decimal up. Will it go into 30? Yes, 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. 30 minus 28 is 2. Since we have something left over, we're definitely going to need another 0. We'll bring it down. 4 will go into 20 5 times. So 3/4 is equal to 0.75. Or we would say, I'm sorry, let's see. 3/4 is equal to 0.75. All right, right, now let's go to the last one, 5 2/3. That's a mixed number, a mix of a whole number and a fraction. So we are going to change this to a decimal. Well, where is that whole number going to go? Let's come back to the 1.7. Where does a whole number go in a decimal? It goes before the decimal. So we're going to start with 5 point something. Now, what about the 2/3? How are we going to change that to a decimal? We're going to do it the same way. You know what? I'm going to do some little dividing lines right here so that you don't confuse these problems. So that's the 3/4 problem. There you go. Maybe that'll help. All right, so we're going to divide 2 by 3, or 2 divided by 3, because remember our fraction is always a numerator divided by a denominator, or a division problem with the fraction bar being the dividing sign. So we're going to say 2 divided by 3. Obviously, 3 cannot go into 2 evenly, so let's try 20 with our decimal point at the top. 3 will go into 20 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. We're going to have another 2. We're going to add a 0 and bring it down. Are you starting to see a pattern here? 3 will go into 20 6 times again. 6 times 3 is 18. And the pattern is just going to repeat. So we're going to put one of our 6's up here, our 0.6, with I'm going to change sides, a repeat sign. Remember, that means that the 6 goes on forever. So 5 2/3 is equal to 5.6. Let me erase just a couple of things here that you don't really need, that as you maybe pause this video or sit here and study it for a minute might help you, okay? So let me think. Okay, so 5 2/3 is the same as 5.6. Now, let's talk about these two words right here. And I will do another little dividing line. This is a small board that I've got to work with today. Let's talk about these two words. A terminating decimal terminates. It means that it ends like 0.75. It comes to a perfect ending. But repeating decimals like 0.6 with a bar over it, or 0.6666666 on forever, is repeating. It does not end. So as you can see, 1/3 is 1 divided by 3. I put my decimal, I divided and divided and divided, and it was never going to end. So 0.333 is written as 0.3 with a bar over it, just like 2/3 is written as 0.6 with a bar over it. And 5 2/3 is written as 5.6, or 5 6/100. So 6/100, that should tell you, oh, I'm sorry, that does not say 100ths, y'all forgive me, 6/10. That's what this decimal holds in its place, is tenths. So 5 6/10. So that means that 6/10 is going to be similar to 2/3, because 2/3 is how we got there. All right, let's go back to this, repeating. So we can write a repeating decimal. I'm wondering if you were even able to see all of that. Oh no, you weren't. Okay, I'm so sorry. Let me go back just a little bit. Looking at our terminating and repeating numbers, so sorry. Okay, so terminating means it ends perfectly. 1/2 is 1 divided by 2. It looks like this. 0.5. It ends perfectly, because then 5 times 2 would be 10. 10 minus 10 would be 0. Let me see if you can see that part. Yes, okay. So now for the repeating part, when we say 1 divided by 3, or 1 divided by 3, it goes on and on and on, repeating the same pattern over and over, so it's 0.333. Or we write it as 0.3 with a repeat sign over it. Just like this one was 2/3, or 2 divided by 3, which is 0.666666, or 0.6 with a repeat line, a repeat bar. But what I wanted to show you is that there's another way to write this. When you have a repeating number, you can also write it as 0.333 and put 3 dots after it. Or for this one, we could have put 5.666 and 3 little dots after it. But I prefer the repeat bar. That's what I would like for you to do usually. Okay, the last part of this lesson was comparing and ordering fractions and decimals. So let's see, I am sitting on the floor doing this because this is a room for little tiny children and it's got a little tiny table and little tiny boards. All right, so if we were comparing the fractions, 0.5, 1/5, of course 0.5 is a decimal, but it's the fraction that says 1/2. So 0.5, 1/5, and 0.37. Just want to remind you that the way that we would compare them is to change this one to a decimal by saying 1 divided by 5, find out what that decimal is, which is 0.2. So then we would really be comparing 0.5, 0.2, and 0.37, and then that would be the way that you would be able to solve that. You need to get them to be similar things, like apples to apples, so that you're comparing things that are alike, and then you can figure out which is least, which is in the middle, and which is greatest. All right, that is all for this video. So I will do another video for lesson 4-5 for Monday. Hope that's helpful. Don't forget to pause and really study what I've done if you're confused, or to rewatch.